NFL, though, you're all about it. And let me just ask you, because I know last week when we talked, you're like, I haven't really made that many new NFL bets. I'm just curious about any of the latest news. Maybe it was the Jonathan Taylor stuff in Indianapolis. Maybe it's Sean Payton running his mouth as the coach of the Denver Broncos. Is there anything recently, maybe it's something else, that has moved the needle for you on any team or any of your thinking?
Well, the big needle mover is the Jalen Ramsey injury. That obviously stinks. I feel, I was quietly excited about the Miami Dolphins. I hadn't played them to win anything like Super Bowl or NFC, but it was the team that I kind of couldn't get over a little bit of a disconnect between, because I don't have a huge gap between the strength of that roster and then the three teams that were market graded a tier ahead of them, and the Chiefs, Bengals, and Bills. It's just that the gap was narrow. The only real knock you can put on the Dolphins is that Tua has never, he hasn't gotten his playoff stinker out of the way. So, it was going to take a little bit of fortuitous seeding and opponents to help the Dolphins get there. But the Jalen Ramsey injury moves their defense from a top 5 unit down to a kind of middle of the pack. I think I grade their roster now 14th. It moves their DBs from top half down to 20th for me. I don't know that the Eli Apple experience is going to work the way they expect it to work, but I all of a sudden see, you're going up against some pretty incredible quarterbacks on your schedule this year if you're Miami, and going into this now without Jalen Ramsey is a pretty decent ding. So a little bit of cold water on any kind of Miami enthusiasm, although I still have them as clearly the second best team in the AFC East, and I have the Jets 4th.
You have the Jets 4th. Ooh, yeah. Wait, let me circle back to that in a second. Let me get back to the Dolphins for a second, because I, too, have said here a few times on this show that I feel like Miami is a team that people are strangely overlooking, which I guess was my way of saying kind of what you were saying, which is, I get it, maybe they're not the Chiefs, but I feel like we have them way below the elite of the AFC. Those are more your words than mine, but I did feel we were overlooking them. The Jalen Ramsey thing is interesting because I have cited Football Outsiders' analysis of cornerbacks in the past. And one of the things that Aaron Schatz was super keen on focusing in on was how cornerback is a very volatile position. You can't really project from one year to the next with most of these guys. Could it be that a guy, even as good as Jalen Ramsey is, that might be a position where, you can't really have counted on his production from a previous year to the next?
It's possible. I will say that I actually spent a good amount of my offseason looking at aging curves for different players and positions, just because I was curious of like how to kind of forward project who was going to come off, fall off of cliffs. Because there's a couple of teams who are coming into this season with some gray beards, and it's enticing to try to come up with some reason to doubt them. What I found looking at aging curves, particularly for defensive backs, year over year is chaos. If you are 50th percentile to 75th percentile, or 25th to 75th percentile, if you're kind of in the bulk of the players that play that position, it's chaos, which, your peak year can be wildly different than your average, wildly different year over year. But if you're in the upper, like maybe the upper, surely the upper quartile, but even more than that, like the upper, 5% of your position in terms of what your peak value is, then number one, you're a heck of a lot flatter over the balance of your career. And number two, your career tends to be much longer. But with DBs, it has like a distinct dip when you're in your late 20s, early 30s, where you kind of have to transition from using your speed and athleticism to kind of using your know-how and understanding of quarterbacks and wide receivers, and kind of just be able to think strategically about how you're playing the position. And there's like a clear kind of bounce back for some cornerbacks who figure that out, and then others who just never get over losing the athleticism, and then just they're out of the league in a matter like faster than you could believe. And so I think with a player like Ramsey, whose peak was so high, I would expect him to continue to contribute at a really high level, well longer than we would have thought. There's examples of kind of guys who he matches career trajectory with, like Charles Woodson and Guys who played into their late 30s. And so, expecting Ramsey to just completely dip this season was not expected. And now you've got a pretty fragile secondary here going, to be paired with what is a really, really impressive, step forward in the defensive coordinator position to Vic Fangio, combined with a really young and elite pass rush. I mean, the front seven for the Miami Dolphins is amazing. So it's now all of a sudden the type of defense where I don't mind kind of laying the points with the Dolphins or, looking for an under when they're going up against a team that has kind of a middling or poor O-line. But if you're going up against a good O-line and a good quarterback, then all of a sudden I'm not feeling as excited about backing the Dolphins. And that's kind of like looking right at the Chiefs, for instance.
But no futures bets for you as a result of this.
No. I think realistically, it just cooled me off on one I would make.
Cornerback is a fascinating position because I remember Nnamdi Asomugha. One year they didn't throw at him at all. The next year they were like, why didn't we throw at him all year last year? That kind of thing. And then you have the Darrell Greens of the world who can make it up with speed late. We'll come back. Why does he have the Jets last? Next. What about the Jets? Why you got him last in the AFC East?
It's a combination of two things. The first is an imbalanced roster, and the second is schedule.
That start.
Oh my God, that first 6 games for the Jets is the most difficult first 6 that I've got in my database in terms of starting the season.
You couldn't, if I said to you,
last 5 years.
Yeah, if I said to you, concoct a horrible 6-game start.
Oh my God,
you would come up with this.
Yeah.
Home Bills, at Cowboys, home Pats, home Chiefs, at Broncos in elevation, home Eagles.
Yeah, the Bengals aren't on there.
Yeah, that's true. You could make it worse. I could replace the Patriots with the Bengals.
4 of your home games, 4 incredibly tough quarterbacks you have to face in that mix. It's exceptionally difficult start to the season, which obviously puts you in a little bit of a difficult spot as you're trying to integrate a new quarterback and new system. But as I look at the Jets roster, it's pretty imbalanced. Their defense, to me right now, grades 3rd best in the NFL. They have the 2nd best DB room. They have a very solid front seven, decent pass rush. They have very, very good depth with the front seven. So the defense is just in general is good, but they faced one of the toughest schedules of quarterbacks of any defense in the NFL this year. So it kind of neutralizes your one strength, I think. And then on the flip side, your offense is, trotting out the 28th best offensive line, especially concerned about the interior of the offensive line compared with an older, less mobile quarterback. Your skill position group, I grade 25th right now. I think it's realistic to expect Aaron Rodgers to give you top 10 quarterback production, even in this, swirling, kind of underwhelming mix of players you've got. But he's paired with Nathaniel Hackett, who I have significant questions about being able to construct and run an offense effectively in today's NFL.
Speaking of which. Yeah,
I think you have to look at Rodgers as the long tail to the under just because of the, offensive line he's paired with and the offensive scheming. So, I'm not to the point where I'm, as sincere and certain as Sean Payton is that Nathaniel Hackett is one of the worst coaches to ever trot on the field. But the fact is we have not seen a strong track record of him calling plays, and he is responsible for calling plays for this Jets team in a way, against a schedule that is just extremely difficult. So, if you put
I was going to ask it the other way, which is,
sure.
What do you see what do you like about the Patriots then by contrast or by comparison?
I just have the Patriots as a more balanced and better roster overall. They don't have the high highs, they don't have the rooms like your DB room, but they're good everywhere on defense. Overall, I grade them as 8th best defense, top 5 front seven, solid DB room, and just in general, you added depth with your, a pretty interesting draft choice in taking Gonzalez where you did, nothing spectacular at all on offense, but a good interior offensive line, and what has to almost certainly be one of the biggest coordinator upgrades at the offensive coordinator position, going from Matt Patricia to Bill O'Brien. So, it's not saying that he's going to light the world on fire with his scheme, and he certainly doesn't have the pieces to work with in terms of wide receiver room. But there's enough positive there that I would say overall you're just a more balanced team, and I think your starters grade out better. The weakness of the Jets at the O-line is really kind of the thing that I could see undoing that unit overall.
Yeah.
I could be coming in low on some of these guys. Surely if Mekhi Becton is healthy by the end of training camp and he's an effective piece of tackle, maybe this isn't as big a concern. But I still look at that as a thin unit and a relatively weak, particularly on the interior. And, if you had a super outstanding mobile quarterback who could, gain first downs with his legs like a Jalen Hurts type of player, then maybe I'm not as worried about that. But I don't see Aaron Rodgers being able to, elude pass rush at this point. And, the state of the NFL, to me at least, you have a bunch of teams that now have really, really good interior D lines, and I think you're going to see a lot of games that are won and lost with just that specific matchup of interior D line versus O line that's not especially strong in terms of guard and center play. So that's where I worry about the Jets kind of in general being able to go score for score with some of the elite offenses on their schedule. And you worry a little bit about how the New York media handles, all the fanfare around this team being on Hard Knocks, what they gave away to get Aaron Rodgers. And then if they start out 1-5 or 2-4 or even 3-3, is that viewed as a failure?
Well, I said, you give them truth serum. They won't admit this, but if you give them a 3-3 right now, they will take it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think I would say that is their ceiling for starting out with the schedule. Yeah. And, that said, I don't know that anyone in the city is going to be especially excited about that. And then you go right into your bye and you come out against some winnable teams. But this is still just this is, one of the most difficult schedules you can find in the NFL. And it's going to be interesting the way it's sequenced with all these tough games out of the gate. Does that sour people on just in general their potential to reach any kind of potential for this team to get to double-digit wins?
It'll be interesting. I said, maybe an adjusted season win total bet after these 6 games clear, but it's not like the bookmakers don't know that is cleared as well.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.